Thank you. What a glorious bunch of people here tonight. People I respect, and I have to tell you, I'm sure many of you know me. First and foremost, I would like to speak to something that has been circulated. This that has been circulated is patently false. And I expect so much more with any candidate who may be running in a race. Let's do this honestly, fair, and have a great discussion. And I'd be glad to talk to anyone why this is wrong. So with that, let me tell you just a little bit about myself. I am a wife, a mother, and a very proud grandmother. I'm a former educator of 19 years. That was my profession, that was my career. I am passionate about education for all children so they can be a success. I became involved in politics like you, believe it or not, way back in 1985. When there was some real zoning problems in my newly growing community of Novi. And I got involved, just like you do, when you see things that you think need to be corrected. And from that, they urged me to not only have a voice, but to have a vote. And I spent 9 years on Novi City Council. Grassroots activism. Then, when our state senator suddenly had to resign, David Honeyman, I was then called into service to become a candidate for the House of Representatives. That was back in 1996. And I served 3 consecutive terms in competitive races in the House of Representatives, and what an honor. And then was elected state senator and served 2 terms there. I think I am probably best known as a tax cutter and a fiscal hawk. And you will all have opportunity to see my record. For 12 of the 14 years, I served as the chair of tax policy in both the House and the Senate. Now, how did this come about? I actually was retired after I became term limited after 2010, enjoying life, my husband, my children, my grandchildren. And any of you who have grandchildren know what a delight that is. Well, I'll tell you, if it wasn't for, I guess, what one would call a crisis in the 11th district with Thad McCotter's situation, I would not have been called upon by people in our party who have been elected, probably by many of you, and called to offer a choice in this election in the 11th district. I want you to know the Democrats are targeting this seat. And the people who have worked to back me have said we need the strongest possible candidate. Now, it's obvious, it's very obvious that there was a choice before what happened to Mr. McCarty. And Kerry was on the ballot then and would have had a competitive opportunity, and you would have had a choice. With Thad no longer being there, there would be no competitive choice. So I ask you to take a good hard look at me and my record. Fortunately, I have served and lived in both Wayne County and in Oakland County. I spent 10 years in Livonia. That's where my kids started school. I mentioned that my record will show that I have worked all the time to lower spending in the state and to reduce our tax burden. Long before there was a Tea Party as such, I was advocating and acting on Tea Party principles. Let me tell you a little bit that I think is interesting. When Kerry decided to run for state senate, you know who he came to talk about running and look for advice? He came to me. And before my name surfaced just recently, in the last week, Kerry and his folks were coming to me again to ask for support. That must tell you something. This is where I stand, and that's what's important to you. Put my glasses on. Most importantly, restore our conservative values. Repeal Obamacare. The focus must be on jobs and job creation. And if you know me, I was able to really create thousands and thousands of jobs. Under my leadership, there are 2 new hospitals. Henry Ford, West Bloomfield, and Novi Providence. 2 new interchanges were built, Wixom and Beck. We need to be very, very cognizant of the growing debt, federal debt. It is killing our hopes for our children. How many of you know what Paul Ryan is trying to do with a balanced budget? And you support him? Well, I do too. I adamantly oppose card check and government bailouts. And you know I have fought against corporate welfare. I am really not someone that is an establishment candidate. Let me tell you how many times the establishment looked askance at some of the stands I took. For example, I was the first to offer and introduce right-to-life legislation. I fought against those tax credit giveaways to Hollywood producers, taking money out of your pockets and distributing it to Hollywood, the most liberal establishment that we can think of. And I took a lot of heat, but I'm glad I did, and I'm glad that's turning around. I also ran an exploratory campaign for 7 months for governor of this state against Governor Granholm. Again, not just walking the walk, but talking the talk. I got out of the race, of course, when a billionaire stepped in named Dick DeVos. I think we need to close our borders to stop the flow of illegal immigration. And in terms of defense, we must protect our American way of life and our freedoms. But we do not need to be interfering in every other country's business. Reducing spending, reducing overregulation, and above all, supporting small businesses and getting people back to work. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and they are the employers. I love this country. I love this country and have dedicated much of my life to the conservative principles and the Constitution that made this country great. I want to make things different. This election, it's not about me. It's about you, your families, your children, and your grandchildren. I want to go to Washington to make things better and work with those who are like-minded. I appreciate your support. Thank you very much for inviting me tonight.